So my name is Erik Lidman. I'm CEO and founder of Aimplan based in Sweden. And with me today is Michael Parrott from 480th Consulting based in Chicago. And today's topic is about sales and demand forecasting, including that we're going to show a short demonstration of how you can do that in Power BI with Aimplan. So jumping over to the agenda for this session is we're going to have a short introduction of Michael and myself. Then Michael will talk about a case study of a case that he built last year and talk about forecasting in general. I will then jump over and talk about different types of revenue and forecasting models, live demonstration, and then just a discussion of how to do this in general and any question that may arise during the presentation. So let's jump over to Michael. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Erik. And hi, everyone. Really excited to be presenting with you today. So like Erik mentioned, my name is Michael Parrott. I'm the founder and partner at 480th Consulting, based in Chicago, Illinois. And so as a boutique consulting firm, we're focused on applying advanced analytics to help clients translate strategy to results quickly. We've got some origins coming from places like McKinsey & Company, Mars & Company. From the strategy side, we've also got a great team of engineers you can see down below from the spanning all disciplines from BI engineering, data science, as well as strategists. And we support clients in a variety of ways, conducting things like strategic diagnostics. We also maintain a library of gold models that we can help deploy and build with clients quickly. We do bespoke product builds where we build things completely custom with clients. And then we also do, we're not in the business of, we're not an outsourced consulting firm. We actually love to help clients build their own skills and capabilities and work ourselves out of a job. And we're also an Aimplan Elite partner and very excited to be watching this platform grow and grow quickly.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And short about me, again, my name is Erik Lidman. I've been working almost 25 years within the EPM, CPM, BPM, FP&A space. Gartner has just changed the name of the same kind of topic across the years, both as a consultant, but also within different software companies. For the last 10 plus years, we built one of the leading FP&A tools in the Scandinavian markets, which this software was acquired in late 2019. And after that, we have now then started to build and sell Aimplan. And what is Aimplan all about? Well, if you think about Power BI, it's the leading business intelligence platform, loved by users across the world, rated by Gartner as #1. We add on top of Power BI some very critical components, especially for the office of the CFO, related to planning, budgeting, and forecasting, which is what we will talk about today, but also about structured reporting, data management, master data management, and collaborations, for example, workflows, processes, comments, and so on inside Power BI. So it's a tool specially built for Power BI that can extend your existing Power BI models. We are a Microsoft ISV partner. We're part of the Microsoft Founders Hub Startup Program. Our visual components are available on Microsoft AppSource. And we are selling and implementing Aimplan together with Power BI across all types of industries in Scandinavia, Europe, but also in US. So with that short introduction, I would like Michael to talk a little bit deeper into sales and demand forecasting.
Awesome. Thanks, Erik. I'll give a trigger warning as this page comes on the screen. While we're all focused and I think excited about the advances of AI and how we can apply that in our businesses, the reality of the day-to-day is things like you see here on the screen are all too common. If you can experience these things, you're definitely not alone today. And there's a real reason for that. There's a high barrier to change. You have cultural elements to change, adopting new tools. You have technological, debt that's piled up. And there's also just the monetary aspect to these things. But I think there's good news these days that there's a lot of advances that it's lowering that barrier to make changes in your business. So we can go to the next slide, Erik. what the future looks like and what we're excited about building with our clients, what we're seeing happening across industry is something we call integrated planning. And with the availability of technologies like Aimplan, it's getting easier and easier every day for all of the different functions within your business to collaborate more easily in the cloud. So what you'll see on the right is basically a schematic here. We've got, when I mentioned we build gold models, you can see each of these different types of planning or forecasting or digital tools are available. These are the types of things that we build with clients. And today, focusing on sales and demand planning, you'll see these three examples of gold models that we're going to talk about more deeply, although there's others. And we'd like to call out that these things all can be integrated into each other. So of course, if you're doing revenue and sales planning, you can see that S&OP item down in the bottom right. A lot of these models feed into each other when you can get these things built out at scale. So we can jump to the next one, Erik.
Sorry.
So, this is the future is connected planning, but what does the current state look like? How good are your forecasts? We like to ask clients, and a lot of times there's a difference between how good they are in practice, but what really matters is how much your teams actually trust those forecasts. So we wanted to share a little bit of market research we've seen. This is coming from Gartner. They did a survey of about 300 sales leaders as well as quote-carrying sellers and asked them, do you have a high degree of confidence in your forecasts or not? And you can see the majority of people do not have a high degree of confidence within their forecasts in the business. And this may be true for you. And if it is, you're one of the many here in terms of having those challenges. I think there's drivers for that. There's market volatility that's been coming into play. We have disruption within a lot of industries happening, and it's just getting harder and harder, I think, to come up with high quality forecasts and really see everything that's coming. But if we go to the next slide, or go ahead.
Michael, first, just a question. Kind of the business value of understanding or having confidence in this kind of forecast. Is that possible to kind of measure in any way, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's hard value, dollars and cents that come into play here. And then there's that soft value of enabling your teams to, really focus on what they're best at and not get stuck in building out forecasts. Actually, if you go to the next page, got a nice visual that shows this really. And so, the forecasts are really important because there's a lot of downstream decisions and downstream, investments that your company's making that depend upon this information. So on this chart, it's just a simple conceptual visual, but you can see as, you're forecasting your demands. Let's say, you have a case of rising demand. You have supply plans that follow this. You have to decide the size of your sales teams and structure those teams against your different product lines. You're going to plan marketing spend and promotional activities. And then if you're in the manufacturing space, you're doing production plans and you need to have inventory levels that you're maintaining. And those things are always lagging your actual sales and demand. And so the bigger the gap there is between these two lines, the more inefficiency you have in your business. So you're carrying too much inventory, you're deploying too many people to do the same job, or too few people, and you're missing out on sales. Basically, anytime there's a gap between these two lines, it's business value at stake. And then, compounding this is the more volatility, the more that line shifts up and down, and the faster it does, the more gap you're see in your business. There's that dollar and cent side. There's also just the frustration and trust and confidence from a forecasting standpoint that the further off you are, you can start to lose faith in in the directions you're setting as a company, and then all sorts of things cascade from that. So this is super important to get right. But there's good news is that you can do it. So we wanted to share on the next page an example of how we've done sales and demand forecasting with a client. So this is a case study that we did last year in 2023 with the US-based client. And we actually helped them to build and deploy a sales forecasting tool within Aimplan. So a little bit about the situation. This client was a CPG manufacturer that had global operations. They had a team of about 70 plus salespeople based in the United States, all across it, embedded in all the markets, and they were developing state level forecasts. As they were building those, they were looking at unit volume every single month across all states and other markets at a SKU level of detail. And before we came in, they were doing this through an Excel-based process that was being administered and run by a FP&A team that was sitting within their headquarters. So you can imagine what that looks like. That's kind of like what that original page looked like. And the other good news in the situation was they did have their data sets around sales actuals loaded within a Power BI environment, as well as a data warehouse. We'd actually helped them put that in place as a part of an initiative earlier that year. But that really enabled them to take the step here and build out the tool with an Aimplan. We'll talk more about what it looks like to extend your current models later. But so what did we do? We have this approach we call the 5I approach, which starts with an ideation phase where we build the design for a model. We have a intelligence phase where we do some diagnostic work. It's where we analyze their baseline forecast performance to understand what kind of bias do they typically have in their forecasts and how accurate has it been historically. We set a goal for forecast improvement. Then we went into our inception phase. We're actually building the Aimplan model. The good news was we started with existing Power BI data sets and data models. We extended those by adding in, think of it as having your actuals table and just extending that into the future by adding a few more tables into the data model within Power BI. And then, a tool is only as good as it is being adopted, and that's not an easy feat. So the strategy we took there for the approach was to do super user testing. So we had end users involved in every stage of the development. And we also did what I call a parallel soft launch. So we had a month where they're still using the Excel tool, and also in parallel, the super users were using the new tool to build the forecast. It's a little bit redundant to build it twice, but it really helped us to learn and make some refinements before we took it to that broader 70-person team to launch. And so what were they able to achieve with this new Aimplan forecasting tool? First of all, saves time. The demo we do for when we were showing it to users was, let's build a forecast in 60 seconds. And, there was there's in some of the sessions, audible wows as we were able to build a forecast so quickly. We allowed online collaboration to occur through all the commenting features you have available in the tool. They were able to see an increase in their accuracy of their forecast results. There's a version control that's available. You can see cell level changes as well as total changes, being able to make snapshots and look at your historical forecasts. Of course, there's live analytics being done. So every day as the data is refreshing, if you're building your forecast, they had up to the minute actuals available to use for forecasting. And I think finally the most important outcome, or one of the most exciting, was the way that this tool was seamlessly integrating into other processes. So they have operations teams that take that demand forecast and build operations plans from it. They were used to be downloading files and Excel sheets. We're able to just even where they had downstream Excel processes, able to make links into the Power BI data models and automate feeds from the forecasting tool into other places within their business. So it was very seamless and easy to do because we had all the data within this the Power BI environment. So it was a great success, and that team is up and running and running the monthly process with it still to this day.
And then how long, when did you start this kind of implementation, and when was it kind of up and running? I know you first built the Power BI model and maybe some kind of data warehouse as the starting point, but if you divide it into building the Power BI and data warehouse and then adding the Aimplan stuff on top of it, what kind of...
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say like the design and intelligence was probably 2 to 3 weeks to lay it out. It's really important to decide what level of detail you want to forecast at. Are you planning at SKUs? Is it really SKUs, or is it product groups? Is it geographies? Is it every market? Is it, are there certain teams that have different opinions on how deep they want to plan and forecast? That's a really important one to break through. And then the actual build of the tool was probably another 4 weeks after that to be able to go to that first soft launch, so maybe 8 weeks to soft launch, and then another 4 to 8 weeks as we scaled it up and deployed it out to the business. So it's a relatively fast process. And again, I think the key here is having the Power BI data models in place and being able to just simply extend those quickly. That let us focus on making the tool useful for the users and get to some of these richer outcomes like integration into other processes.
And just to comment on this case, I see one common thing that we see when looking at different organizations and this kind of process is the challenge of bringing actuals into the planning process. If you're running spreadsheet processes, you're going to have the first 3 months with actuals, and then you're going to forecast the rest of the year. How do you get that into your Excel templates? you need to then email it out to all the people and then bring that back, try to get it into a central database, and then report on this budget data. And that's a very cumbersome process that may take weeks to perform if you have 70 salespeople all across the country. When they now run this process from the day they open for kind of pre-forecasting for a quarter or month till they close the period, how many days or hours does it take to run that process?
It used to be that the central team would have to spend 3 or 4 days preparing all the files, loading actuals, and then there's a timestamp on how there's a delay then between the actuals and when teams are looking in the reports of what they're seeing. So you have people planning on old information, but then filling them in and returning them back. Everyone needs time. It's giving them a few days to do that. You're depending upon people's kind of Excel skills, and we all know how that can go. If you've worked over with like a version 52 of a file before, you know how that goes. And then consolidating them, rolling them up. And there'd be instances where you're consolidating files and something goes wrong. You have to go back and have, a second version of that process run. Versus once we had this tool in place, we have just simply an actuals fact table in the data model that's being updated at 3 a.m. overnight every day with the latest actuals, which means they could almost go to more of a continuous process. There was no longer like a release date that you can start planning on the 15th of the month. A user could go in any day and start working and developing those plans. And they simply picked a date where they'd snap the line and say, be done by this date. But multiple users could work in the same model at one time. They could track progress of those users. And the central team really just kind of then monitored the results as they were coming in and were asking questions on the results, and really could spend their time on having a meaningful conversation on the forecast itself instead of the kind of, moving data and shuffling data around type activities.
Great.
So it was awesome. It was great. And there was even a couple like richer features we enabled. So I wanted to give one more example of that on the next slide, which was in the intelligence phase. There's a lot of value to just kind of automating a manual process, but you can go further than that. And this is something I learned when I was at McKinsey & Company. I was there for 6 years before launching my firm. We looked at what leading companies would do, and industry leaders and their FP&A teams we saw were providing a lot of value-added services to the business and their business partners. They're not simply processing data and processing inputs. So an example of what we did there in this case study was in the intelligence phase is we went back and looked at historical forecasts, and we looked at our mean average error and mean average percent error, so our MAPE, and we also looked at the bias to see if people tended to over or under forecast. And here you can see on the right, there's a positive 10% bias that was immediately clear. And we were looking at, depending on the time of the year, 5 to 15% MAPE was pretty typical. And what our team did was we developed several different automated kind of statistical forecasts, completely hands off the keyboards that you could generate. And we back tested them against the historical results and then compared them to the real forecasts. And one thing, and you can see that there's an improvement. So the MAPE was falling below 10% on the left-hand side with 2 of our automated models. And our bias, we were able to get closer to the 0% range with these kind of automated forecasts. Forecasting is, I think, a human process first. You're not going to ever go completely fully automated. And the way that we enabled that with an Aimplan, you can see in the small screenshot, there's a suggestion feature. So people could go in and use the suggested automated forecast in the tool and have the choice to bring it in, or they could bring it in and compare what they are forecasting against the suggested forecast and drive a deeper conversation of where we're seeing variances. So we didn't go to the point of having the tool completely automated, but we brought this insight from the finance team to the sales partners as a part of the tool.
That's great. And also making sure that the organization really buy into the numbers and they are aware of kind of the targets and where you're headed is, I think, is important.
Yeah, definitely. And just even this conversation talking about, what does accuracy mean, and seeing that, humans or tools, everyone's going to be off by a bit. I think there was a cultural change that comes in as you think about accuracy in a healthier way in planning. So, this is one example. We've done this with a number of other clients. Wanted to share some just general on the next slide, share some keys to success. So no matter what you're doing, if you want to do successful sales and demand planning, there's really, I think a lot of people gravitate towards the right side of this page, which is just thinking about the number, especially if you're an analytical person like myself, you think about the numbers, and there are important data-centric keys to success. So the first is getting as close as you can to real-time data integration. So when someone's making a plan, they should be using the numbers that are, up to that day recent. This lets you make the smartest decisions you can. The second is providing data-driven insights while you're planning. So what the beauty of having the tool within Power BI is, you can, as you're entering your information, provide analytics to inform the volumes that people are forecasting. You can show within context historical results, rolling run rates, all sorts of other KPIs side by side that are being calculated off that real-time data. And then finally, because it's faster to do, you can do more frequent review and adjustments more quickly. You can go in and make a change in a minute and it's done. And those are all the data-centric views. But really, I think any sort of sales and demand planning process, it's a people-centric process at the end of the day. And these are the ones that I think are more commonly missed if you go out and build a tool. It's getting communication between teams and setting up your commenting capabilities within a tool correctly and making it so it's a collaboration tool. It's not just a submission tool. That's what takes forecasts from good to great. Secondly, by putting it in a tool where it's a cloud-based, collaborative platform, you can bring more perspectives in. So maybe in the past, you used to only have 20 people planning. By making the tool easier, you can bring in 50 different people and get a greater, more diverse perspective from your business into the plan. And typically more diverse perspectives means more accurate and better insights in the outcomes. And then finally, because it's integrated, your goals can be tied directly into the forecasting. And in fact, in the case study we just talked about, they liked the forecast tool so much, they actually just built their full year business plan in the same tool. And in this case, you have kind of a direct link between your business plans and your forecasts, and it brings the goals together. It helps with execution. So with all this in mind, there was a lot to dump on you quickly. I think the exciting stuff is actually looking into the tool and technology. So if we go to the next page, we're looking back. This is a reminder of, there's this whole world of integrated planning that's out there. Today, we're focusing on sales and demand planning. We want to bring you 3 examples within the actual technology itself to show how these 3 things come to life. So I'll pass it back to you, Erik.
Great, thank you. So if we focus on sales and demand forecasting specifically in the integrated planning world, it's a lot of different components regarding OPEX and headcount planning and so on. But let's focus on sales and demand forecasting. We normally see 3 typical types of sales and demand forecasting models. The first one is, call it a traditional revenue budget or forecast. It's very, from an accounting perspective, it's the chart of accounts, it's by month. It's just the numbers, the revenues that you put in, and you need to collect this from a lot of team leaders or managers out in the organization, a very traditional way of doing revenue forecasting. The second one is more of a driver-based, where you do it on a more granular level. It's maybe by product or by customer or a combination or per sales channel. We talk about quantities and prices and discount models and exchange rates and all of these kind of variables that can affect the revenues. Here we see monthly forecast, but there are also companies working more of an operational demand planning models with maybe a 52-week rolling forecast or a 26-week rolling forecast. And they have kind of a window open, which they move every week, 1 week at a time forward to really, on an ongoing basis, plan volumes and prices and so on, and campaigns. And then a totally different type of revenue planning is more of a sales operation, setting the quotas every year for the sales reps, and then having dashboards and follow up every week and maybe every day on kind of what kind of deals are you closing, what are the really short-term sales operation goals that you're trying to hit, and how do you work against those. So what I will try to show now is inside Power BI, these kind of 3 different models. But before we do that, let's just talk about Power BI briefly. What is Power BI? So, Power BI is a great data analytics tool. It takes data from a lot of different data sources. You can connect to more than 170 different types of data sources, and you can then present this data out to end users. But it's very much about looking at the historical data, what happened yesterday, last week, and last month, and last year. And it's also, you see the arrows is going in one direction. You cannot really sit inside Power BI and edit numbers and edit data and work with forecasting and planning. And with Aimplan, we add these capabilities. So inside normal Power BI report, you add our Aimplan visuals. And a visual is in Power BI, you have charts and you have matrix and you have tables and so on. But we have our own Aimplan visuals that you just drop into the page inside Power BI. And those are connected to our Aimplan Cloud SaaS service running in Azure. And integrated into your existing Power BI data set. So this means that if you have a Power BI data model today with your customers and sales and products and so on, you can actually take that model you already have and just extend that with planning capabilities. And this makes it possible to really fast capture information data from the organization or beyond. You can even take Power BI and extend it outside of your organization, because you can ask your kind of partners or resellers to work inside your Power BI environment to provide you with really fast forecasting. You can then get this information, analyze it, and really adapt your business really, really fast to the changes in the market conditions out there. And especially now with all the inflation and wars and everything that is happening all the time, you really need to be fast in adapting to the changes. And you get rid of these manual spreadsheet processes that takes a lot of time. They are very cumbersome, and there's a lot of it's a huge risk that you're having errors in these forecasting models. So by that, let's jump into Power BI and look at some Aimplan inside of Power BI. And just to jump back to the case study Michael talked about, their users work inside Power BI, but they never realize that it's Aimplan that is actually providing the planning capabilities.
Yeah, in terms of the upskilling, if a user can use Power BI, they can use Aimplan. It really doesn't require any additional training. I mean, there's a few cool features that it has that you wouldn't get in Power BI, but the learning curve is you're already up it if you're using Power BI today.
Absolutely. So let's start to talk about traditional revenue planning and forecasting and see how that works. So think about the normal Power BI report. We are on a specific page. We have, in Power BI, you have slicers and filters. You have this beautiful data visualization with charts and so on. And in the middle here, we have one of our visuals, the Aimplan planning visual, which makes it possible not only to view numbers, but also to edit data. So for this cost center Stockholm, this company, for a specific scenario, I can actually go in and say, okay, I believe we're going to have maybe, let's do like this. I will actually zoom in so you can see a little bit more. Let's say that in January, we're going to sell for 8 million. I can then copy this across. And I can start to edit data inside of Power BI and press save. And this is normally not possible. And you can see that when you press save, the numbers changes automatically. So if I put in like 20 million here and press save, you will see how the charts are updated in real time. So if you develop this kind of report in Power BI, add our visual, use your existing dimensions and the actuals from last year you get from your existing Power BI model. The only thing you need to do then is to take this report, click share, copy link, and then mail this link out to the 50 sales reps or whatever department managers that's going to update those numbers. And we rely on the normal Power BI security mechanism. So depending on who you publish this report to, you can control who can edit this data. And with the built-in row-level security features within Power BI, you can control, for example, which users should be able to work with which cost center in this case. You can also do a lot of other fancy stuff. So instead of putting in numbers on individual cells or individual month, you can add data on full year or aggregates. So I can say, okay, for the full year, 30 million. And that will be spread across the different months. I can say that, okay, in September, I'll say that we're going to have like 15 million, and that will be spread across the different accounts here. And again, I can press save to store this data. I can also do things like I want to increase this sales by plus 12%. These kind of quick things that makes it possible to easily update the numbers in a much more efficient way. Another thing that we can do inside Power BI reports with another of our visuals, which is the commenting visual, is that we can, as an end user here now, I'm responsible for the Stockholm cost center. I can go in and add a comment here. Like this, and I can save this. And this comment is connected to this filters I've set. So now this data, this comment is stored together with the numbers on the Stockholm cost center, on this scenario, on this company, and so on. And as everything in Power BI, if I say that I want to see more than one cost center, I also select Skellefteå and Uppsala. We can see that the numbers are immediately updated and aggregated. So now we see the full revenues for all our offices here. And we can also see all the comments for the different offices. So everything is in real time. Another important thing is that if I go in and change this number, say that we put in like 3 million here in January, we have full audit trail of all the changes. So if I now click on another page in my Power BI report, we will see all the transactions that have been happening during my session here. So here you see all the changes I have made. And the last one, the 3 million in revenues, that is why it's a minus here. Was I put in that value on this account number, on this cost center. It was me as a user, and we see exactly what point in time. And this means that we have traceability. We know who to blame when something is wrong, is our normal joke here. But it's really good to know what's been going on in the model, for sure.
One thing there too, Erik, we found this is also really helpful for is if you're on the central team and you're watching as people are entering data, you can see who's been working and who hasn't yet. Because there's always that reminder of, hey, Michael, just a reminder, see, you haven't made much progress yet. You want to jump in there, and you can kind of aggregate the audit trail and then see who's been doing work. It helps you to facilitate the process too.
Correct. Absolutely. So that was an example of traditional budgeting or revenue forecasting, kind of from an accounting perspective. If we then head over and instead talk about a little bit more sophisticated model with volumes and prices and discounts models and so on, and it works in the same way. You utilize your existing Power BI model, because there you have maybe your customers and maybe your products. And in this example, we also have different sales channels and so on. So now I'm looking at the direct sales, customer class C, this product segment, computers. I see the customers that I'm responsible for, me as a sales director here. I go into targets. I see the products that we have been selling to target, and we can see last year's data. So far, everything is just actuals. This is stuff that you already have in your Power BI model if you're running sales data inside Power BI. So now we, as an end user, can say, okay, in the future here, I think we're going to sell like 99 units. I can copy that across. I can also put in a big number on this customer as a total, say 25,000 units. Or go into a specific line and say we're going to have like 4,000 units here. So we can do this kind of splashing or top-down allocations, as it's called. And then again, press save. And what happens now is that this data we have changed is going down to the database, and it's recalculating the model. So if I go in on this customer in August and say we're going to have like 5,000 units here, you will see that a jump in the chart in August here because we are adding so much more sales in August. We also have this functionality, as Michael talked about, this suggestion feature. So this means that me as an end user, I can go and click on any number here. Let's say that I click on target here. I can say, right click on it and say apply suggestion. And then in this case, we have 2 AI models behind the scenes. So now we have an AI model providing me with a proposal here. So you see that last year's sales was 9,187 units. Right now, the proposal is 10,000 units. And then I, as an end user, can go in and say, I don't trust these numbers or whatever, but I need to commit them as if I was the one that was actually storing this data, which means that I need to be responsible for my forecast. And again, developing this report based on your existing Power BI data model is easy. You use your existing kind of dimensions and so on, and then you just click the share button, copy link, copy, and email this out to the end users that are going to work with this kind of forecasting.
One thing, Erik, could you mention I see some cells are gray versus white. Just mention the difference.
Yeah,
what that
correct.
means.
So in this case, the gray cells you can't edit. So you see last year's actuals, for example, you can't edit. What would happen here is when January and February and March numbers start to pop in here, you would see that these columns here would become gray because it's actuals. You can't change the actuals are what the actuals are. And you can also have other mechanisms. You can have control by using Aimplan security to control on a line by line and cell by cell level which user should be able to edit which data. So you could actually lock that for this product segment, even if they are in the same page, they should not be able to edit this data. They should view them. They are gray, but they cannot edit those numbers. What happens then when we change these numbers? Let's put in some, increase this by, or say like this, we ask the system to provide an estimate for all my customers. Let the AI model do the forecasting. So then I can click this button here and say, use an AI forecast. And we now, for all the customers here, get kind of a forecasted volumes. And let's accept this one. So actually with 2 clicks, the end user can more or less, if they trust the AI model, they can see that, okay, let's just store this data down to the model. And what happens now is that Power BI is recalculating the effect of this. And that is performed not by Aimplan. That's a normal DAX measure in Power BI. So you can see that the total revenues right now for this kind of profit center and so on is 15.9 million. And that is actually the volumes we see here combined with the prices that we have in another page. So we could go in there and increase the prices if we would like to do that. But what we want to see here is what we talked about before, is integrated planning. So if we go over to a normal report or kind of pulling this data together, we can see that the number we just forecasted on a line product by product and customer by customer level is then showing up in the P&L statement here. So the 15.981 is showing up on product sales, and we can see that they are locked, they are gray. I can't go in and change the numbers here because the numbers here are coming from the sub-model, from the revenue model, so to say, into the integrated P&L model. And you can see we have the same thing here with salary, for example. The salary cost is coming from the headcount planning model. And that is how you bring the numbers together from the different sub-models into the integrated planning model. Okay. Any questions or comments or?
Maybe one would be on the scenario side. If you're,
all right,
how can you control those? Or if you wanted to fix one, can you open and close scenarios?
Yes. So the volumes, for example, that we just work with, right now we are working with a specific scenario. Forget about the name. We must update this demo. But you can have as many scenarios as you wish in your model. And to manage these scenarios, those are actually managed in the Aimplan portal outside of Power BI. So I will just jump into the admin portal to show you how that works. So inside the admin portal, you go to scenarios. And here is where you define and create your scenarios. So I can say, okay, I want to add a new scenario like 2024 Q2. I want to say that this scenario should now be open for editing. So the end user should be able to edit this data. And then later on, I will close this one. I can also copy data from one scenario to another. So when I close the Q1 forecast, I can copy that over to the Q2 forecast. And what will happen then is that when I'm inside Power BI, I will all of a sudden see in my scenario dropdown, I will see the open forecast here. So I can easily switch to the 2024 Q2 forecast. And I would guess that this is now totally empty. For sure, we see the actuals, but there is no planning data. And then we can use this kind of AI model to really fast populate this model if we would like to. Okay, so let's jump back to this picture. Last thing I'm going to show is more of a sales forecasting on an operational, from an operational perspective, and quota planning. So again, jumping back to Power BI. So once a year before the year starts, we sit down together with our sales managers. So say that we're going to set the quota for the manager for the B customer segment, which are these customers here. We see the last year's sales here. We can plan the quota. So say in Q4, I put in, let's increase the quota here from 6 million. Let's add, say that they're going to sell 4 million here. So we end up with 8 million. Set some tough target for Q4. So that is kind of setting the targets. And then we have more of an ongoing forecasting model, which is a normal Power BI dashboard. Every sales rep or sales director just go into Power BI. They can look at the numbers they have. So I can see that it's 3 days left of this quarter. We have a quota of 8 million. We have 3 million left to close this quarter. And the current forecast right now, the last one I made maybe yesterday, is 6.3 million. And down here, we have the Aimplan visual connected to this underlying SaaS service. So I see the actuals coming in, how much have we sold, the closed deals. I see my quota per customer. I see how much more there is to be closed. And now I can go in to do my realistic, optimistic, and worst case forecasting. So let's say that we're going to sell like 600K here. And now this is working in what we call live mode, which means that you don't need to press any save button. You just go in here and put in some number. And when you press enter, it's automatically stored down into this central database. So this makes it possible to really fast forecast every day, or at least every week, kind of getting an up-to-date picture of how much have we left to close and where should we focus our effort. Okay, so let's then just show you a pretty cool thing, because you know that Power BI is a Microsoft product, so it's integrated into SharePoint, it's integrated into Teams, and for sure it's integrated into PowerPoint. So let's take this dashboard and just embed that into PowerPoint. So let's just show, now we are in PowerPoint. We are running Power BI inside of PowerPoint. Then I can just go here and say, I want to refresh this report with the latest data that we have in the Power BI model. So now it's reading the data from the model. And it's updating. And I can even now with the Aimplan visual, I can sit at a meeting in this conference room together with my sales team and actually do the forecasting inside PowerPoint. So I can go in and say, we're going to sell like 300K here. And now we are updating the PowerPoint, or we're actually updating Power BI and this central data model behind the scenes with all the functionality that we have there inside of PowerPoint. So that was kind of an example of these 3 different types of planning models. Have you seen any questions in the chat, Michael?
Yeah, there's one question on, when you're forecasting numbers, how do you enter, say, calculated numbers? If you wanted to enter, besides typing them in or using the relative, plus or minuses, if you wanted to enter, I don't know, a rolling 3-month trend as a calculated value, how you can do that?
Okay, so you can always copy. You can copy from Excel. You can copy within sheets. You can use this relatives plus percentage and plus minus fixed values. Currently, you can't kind of do trend ads, but that is something that we're looking into inside the visual to be able to do that. Normally, we see that most people want to use this suggestion feature, because then they can just go into the page, press a button, they get a good suggestion, and then they change the quarterly value or the yearly value, and that will be spread across with some kind of trend that they probably have seen somewhere before. So that's what we see right now, at least.
The other way I've thought about it before too is basically anything that you can code as a DAX measure, you can load as a suggested value. So if your DAX measure is the 3-year CAGR and you want to have the 3-year CAGR available to you, you can make it so, and you know, that's where I think the intelligence phase comes in, because you say, what are the KPIs that are typically used? Is it a 3-month trend, 6-month trend, 3-year trend? But for those common ones, you just write a DAX measure for each one, load it in as a suggested value, and you're off to the races.
And make it as simple as possible for the end user. I mean, they should hopefully get the suggestion that they believe in when they just look at the numbers, for sure. Okay. So to summarize then, Power BI is a great tool. You easily integrate data from different data sources. You present that out to end users. But now with Aimplan, you can actually capture a lot of data and information really fast. It can be numbers, but it can also be kind of commentary surrounding or kind of giving you a context to those numbers. And you have this live, and you don't need to email a lot of spreadsheets and collect them. So that's kind of a summary. Now we open up for real Q&A, if we can figure out where to see the questions.
I've got them kind of pulled up on the side here a little bit. One was, I had just kind of curious to hear your perspective, Erik, on pros and cons of using an Excel model versus Power BI model. We've talked about it a little bit, and I shared some notes that I had, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, Excel is a great tool. It has been around for, I mean, decades. So it's proven its capabilities. I would say that Excel is the perfect tool if you are like 2 people or maybe 3 people in one department, and you're going to kind of have a very complex calculation model where you're going to have a lot of variables and a lot of complexity, and you're very few people working with it. I mean, Excel is then great. But if you have 10 sales reps, or if you have 20 project leaders, or if you have kind of 50 department managers, and you really need to be able to, via the web browser, to really capture fast information from the end users, then I think this kind of real FP&A solution, in this case based on Power BI, is a much better and more efficient tool than rely on Excel for that kind of exercise. So I think the complexity of the model, and also the number of users that are, the number of people part of the process, is a very good sign of when it's applicable. Your comment on that? Do you have any other?
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, and that all kind of gets uncovered in the design phase. Typically, is how I like to think about it. It's always right. What's the right tool for the job? And for sure, there's jobs that Excel is a great tool for. And I think that if you're, the one that's building or designing these things, you have to think through that step up front.
Yeah.
I guess there's another question that came through on the data volume aspect here, in terms of any data volume limitations that might exist.
So the data volume limitation is very much limitation by Power BI and Microsoft. So you can say that when you have a lot of data, that is normally in your actuals data set, where you have all your orders, you have maybe millions and trillions of orders and huge dimensions and so on. The planning data sets are smaller, so the performance of the solution is very much based on how you construct your Power BI model. So it's the in-memory column store index model that is actually providing you with the performance of Power BI, and our visuals are not different than any other of the visuals when kind of displaying the data on the screen.
That's great. Yeah, I'm scanning the questions too. There's one about just like seeing an example of what DAX can look like for some of these calculated suggestion measures.
Sure. So let's jump over to Power BI. Actually, now I'm running Power BI service, which means that if I click edit here, now I'm an administrator. We can, I mean, you have a normal chart, and if you know Power BI, you know how to publish data or get data into a chart. You have your data model on the right side. You have your calculated measures, maybe in separate folders. In this case, we have different calculated sales measures, and you could say that DAX is very similar to Excel syntax of a formula, but you have much more capabilities, and for sure there is a steeper learning curve also, because you have much more capabilities using DAX. But behind each of these measures, you have a formula, which is doing a calculation. And then inside normal Power BI, you just drag that into your chart. So you put things on different axes in the chart and so on. And our visual is not different. So if you click on our visual here, you can see that we take data from the existing data model. So we have the customer dimension, we have the date dimension, we have the company dimension, we have the different scenarios and so on. We add those as fields to the visual, and we add different kind of measures to the visual. And some of them are measures that you're able to edit, and some of the measures is just providing you with suggestions or showing the actuals. In this case, the gray cells here are the actuals, but it's just a normal Power BI measure. But in this case, we have realistic, we have optimistic, and worst case. They are specific measures that our visual is configured to be able to do write back on. But in Power BI service, you can't show the real DAX statement. But if you Google DAX and Power BI, you can get a lot of information about how to write that kind of formulas.
Yeah, the end user on the sales team would not need to worry about DAX or anything to run the tool. But if they're the person actually building the report and publishing it, if you're the engineer that's behind the scenes here, then that's where that skill is super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are some comments here also about kind of all the capabilities of the measures in Power BI. For example, there is a lot of time and date functions. So if you want to have a rolling 3 month or rolling 6 month kind of measure showing up or using that in one way or another, or if you want to take last year's value and apply them and so on, there is functionality regarding time, which you really can't find in Excel, I think. Well, you can, but when you talk about Excel, if you have developed a Power BI model and have this kind of data set that we see here in Power BI, you can always use Excel to connect to this data set and work with pivot tables in Excel to analyze data in Excel, as any other kind of cube technology that you can bring into Power BI, into Excel. So even if you work with Power BI and do the forecasting inside of Power BI, you gather data from your 200 department managers really fast, you can still work inside Excel to pivot and analyze this data if you would like to use Excel as your primary tool for analytics.
Great. I think I'm scanning the questions. I think we've covered the ones that I've seen here so far.
Yeah.
So it's great.
So I was thinking to do like this, that we should just put this up on the screen and ask you to reach out to Michael or myself to just get in contact, and we can schedule a catch-up meeting. So now you have a task, and that is to bring your mobile phone forward and then just point it to this QR code, and you will be able to schedule in our calendar directly. And we would be really happy to catch up with you to see how we can help you and assist you. Any final comments from you, Michael?
No, just to the same, to reiterate, we're available. We know every business is different, every situation is different, and we're very happy to talk with you about how this might be relevant for you or how you could kind of bring it to life, because we know everyone's starting at a different starting point too. So look forward to talking with you all, and thank you all for your attention and time today.
Great, thank you. And I think this LinkedIn Live thing was pretty cool, actually. So let's do it one more time, maybe next month.
It worked great, yeah. Worked great, really easy.
Great, thank you very much for attending. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.